Okay, good evening. Man, we have had a hell of a week, haven't we? So, we're going to start with the top of the news. Now, for those who are following me on Instagram, it's better if you follow me on YouTube for the lives because I can see all your chats. On Instagram, I got you, but I can't see any of your chats. If you come to YouTube, the link is in the bio. I'll be able to see your chats. Okay? So, first things first, we're going to talk about the ice storm that we got, or the lack of some of the ice storm that came this week. Then we're going to move on to some of the developments in Iran. And we're going to be talking about, yes, the Epstein files. So that's basically what we're going to be looking at today. Geopolitical and domestic issues. Thank you for coming from Instagram. I appreciate you. Jorge. Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Okay, so feel free to interact with me. I'll be talking to my YouTube chat. Again, I can't see the chat on Instagram. So as we go through, if you're coming from Instagram, link is in my bio. So check that out. Okay, so first, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but my my area got pretty messed up from the ice storm. In fact, my mother-in-law crashed in our neighborhood because my son had to go to the doctor for bronchitis treatment, which I got sick for too. If my followers saw me, I got messed up, guys. You could still kind of hear it. The ice storm did give us, quite a bit, and it caused a lot of issues. The last I saw, the ice storm gave us, caused 85 deaths in the United States. So when we talk about, some people didn't get. What's up, man? What's up, guys? Thanks for joining from Instagram, guys. I appreciate that. So again, one more time for you guys, just so we're getting started. I got Instagram here, but I can't see your chats with Instagram. If you want to have an open discussion with me and talk to me, jump over to my YouTube. My link is in my bio. But I appreciate you guys being here and watching anyways. I just won't be able to talk to you. Okay, so ice storm. So it did affect a majority of the U.S. A lot of us are starting to get word that we're going to get snow again this weekend. So parts of the U.S. that got iced up, we're going to get snowed in again, which isn't the greatest news for our parents out there. Shout out to Casey. I appreciate you guys. Thank you all for joining from Instagram. Come over. Yeah, so Casey is a rock. She's acting as my administrative assistant now. So before, she's just been taking care of the house and everything, but she's jumping onto the social media stuff, and she's becoming like a business person when it comes to this. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, you guys got a big snow, huh? Great silver and gold crash today. Yeah, we're going to be talking about that. Oh, hey Casey, I love you so much. Thanks for joining. So Casey's my wife. She's in the YouTube chat. So shout out to Casey. She's a really big part into what you guys see in the final product. She is my administrative assistant, and she watches my content and does a peer review before I actually post. So shout out to Casey. She helps me quite a bit. Okay, so the ice and the snow. Second, we do have to talk about the elephant in the room. Alex Preddy. So, the second American citizen died this last week. And I never thought I would see images like this in the United States. So just to give you guys my opinion is that we should be going after the criminals and doing targeted raids towards specific criminals, not marching down the street and asking everybody for their papers. That's not America. Casey is my queen. She's our queen. Queen Goldsby. We all love Casey. Another thing that happened, talking about some of the violence that happened in Minneapolis this week, is that it came out today that Renee Good had a pulse for over 9 minutes after she was initially shot. So I know there's a division in this country on the was it justified or was it not, but the humanity. So I talked about this earlier today, or earlier this week, but I'm going to bring it up again because I think it's important, especially for Americans here, our patriots, right? The Boston Massacre. So the Redcoats showed up to the customs house where there was a protest. And the American colonists were known to open carry. It's one of the things that we put in our Second Amendment, right? We can open carry. So a shot was heard. And the Redcoats, the British, opened fire on a crowd. Five American colonists now lay dead. And the justification that the British gave was that the American colonists were known to open carry firearms. So the shot that they heard meant that the American colonists deserved it. History rhymes if you listen. It's time for all of us to start paying attention. Thank you so much. For those who are saying, I'm glad that you are feeling better. I was down for the count on Wednesday. It was the middle of the day. I called my boss and I told him I had to go lay down, and it was like 1 o'clock. I didn't even take any medicine, guys. It was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I hit the pillow, and I was out in minutes. And then I had some lung issues. I still have some lung issues. But yeah, Wednesday I was down. Yeah, so it's important to highlight that history has, to the observer, it can appear that history repeats, but in fact it rhymes. You will not find an exact replica of an event in history, but you will find a rhyme. For example, you will never have a situation again where Germany is thinking about invading Poland with a Russian strategic asset on the other side, right? That's World War II. but you may have a rhyme where something like that can be applied to another scenario, right? Nicotine patch helps. I don't smoke cigarettes. I appreciate that. Yeah, being sick sucks. Yeah. Go green, I'm out. uh, so, um, so for those who don't know anything about me, real quick, so I went through a couple of the news stories, and I'll be talking about some of the others here soon. So, let me tell you a little bit about me. So, my name is Keith. I'm from Montana. I currently live in Virginia. I joined the Air Force in 2007. I joined as a 2E2, eventually transferred to a 3 Delta. It's basically communications and networking, right? So I was a comms guy. I deployed to Iraq in 2009 before I could legally drink. During that time when I was in Iraq, I was under rocket and mortar fire for 6 months. I got back from the desert, got out of the military, and it took about a year for me to start experiencing some of those issues that everybody knows about, right? Some of those separation issues from the military, some of the anxiety issues because of combat. So it took me about a year. Started having panic attacks everywhere. See, when rockets and mortars were coming in, you didn't really have a warning, right? So when I got back and I started living my life, these panic attacks would just happen without warning. So the reason why I'm telling you this today, guys, is that for the first time in a couple of days, I had a very severe, massive panic attack this morning. And I think it probably has to do with some of the stuff that's going on with Iran, and we'll talk about it here soon. But it felt like I was under fire again. It's like a snap, pow, and then all of a sudden it just happens. So Queen Casey had pulled me out of it for 45 minutes today. But it's important to understand that there's a cost of war, guys. It's not just the Iraq war is over and everything's done, right? That's not the way it works. Yes, so my stream is saved to my YouTube channel. You guys can watch the entire thing after it's done. Go to sleep, man. Okay, so next story. The buildup in Iran. So everybody knows over the past couple of weeks there's been some protests. And Iran went from shooting BB guns and pellets and, arresting people to straight up shooting people. Now, in Iran, the official estimates right now is that there could be up to 30,000 deaths from the government hunting down people that are peacefully protesting. Even with the shit that we got going on in the United States, you can still go out and peacefully protest, right? In Iran, they would hunt you down like an animal. So what's been going on with Iran. Marco Rubio testified to Congress that Iran may be the weakest it has ever been. That's even right after the entire Islamic Revolution, when the military was in disarray and they really didn't know which way to go. They're saying that they're even weaker now than then. So the question now is, we sent the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier strike group with thousands of sailors and destroyers and FA-18s and F-35s and F-15s on this aircraft carrier. And it's sitting right off the coast of Venezuela, or Iran right now, not Venezuela. Sounds a lot like Venezuela right before Maduro was captured, doesn't it? So, this is what I am hearing. What I am reviewing online and with publicly available information is that the United States has notified Middle East allies that an attack on Iran is happening. They're not saying what specific time, but allegedly, according to some news outlets, the United States has notified our allies that an attack on Iran is happening. Now, what does this mean? What this means is that the United States is going to establish air power, air superiority over Iran almost immediately. What are the concerns? The concerns from an Iranian counterattack would be massive drone swarms that could not be shot down in time if there's 100,000 coming at a aircraft carrier, or if there are rockets in conjunction with that being shot at. These weapon systems and these aircraft carriers and these destroyers have countermeasures. They do. But what happens if you have 10,000 drones that are launched at the same time, and then right behind them they launch 5,000 rockets at the exact same time? What happens then? So we have plenty of countermeasures, and we have things that we can do on the back end. The question now is that what is the United States actually looking at here? They're saying that we're going to go in. What would that look like? I told you guys about a week ago that Iran was invaded by Kurdish forces. Kurdish forces want a separate country called Kurdistan. The United States worked closely with Kurdish forces during the Iraq War. Kurdish forces took orders from United States generals, right? So, if you can establish air superiority over Iran, and you can have boots on the ground in the form of Kurdish forces with the promise of their own nation, you start having a coalition. The United Kingdom today, in the form of its Prime Minister, said that we will have to, quote, deal with Iran after the protests. That sure the hell sounds like a coalition to me as well. Now let's talk about the coup de grace today. What looks like to be largely redacted Epstein files were dropped today, right before the stock market dropped. Right before the stock market closed, I mean. To me, I think that is a clear indication of a massive distraction that's about to happen. Yeah, I'm interacting with my chat. I can see you. Sorry, I'm just getting through these thoughts and then I'm going to talk to you guys. So again, if you're on Instagram, head over to YouTube and join the live there. I'll be able to see your chat on YouTube. I can't see your chat on Instagram, but I can see it on YouTube. So, these Epstein files just dropped, and there are some, what I've seen already, some things in there. And we've been positioning around Iran. Historically, the United States has acted when there's a severe domestic issue, and especially when the stock markets have closed. The shutdown has apparently been avoided. What's up, guys? What's up, guys? Thanks for joining. So the shutdown has been avoided. They just approved a bill in the Senate. There's going to be a temporary shutdown because there's not enough time for the logistics to happen. But they just approved the last part of the shutdown. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. So anyways, it turns out in the Epstein files that Elon Musk has been implicated. I was just reviewing that before I left too, which explains the sudden turn from being a liberal darling to being a MAGA influencer. I sit in the middle and I just observe, guys. I observe and I call balls and strikes. I appreciate that. He said that I'm the number one source for geopolitical speculation. B. Charles. I appreciate that. I try to make logical conclusions for you guys, and I try to make it make sense for you guys. So I don't think that the U.S. government wants the number one story going into the weekend being the Epstein files. I don't think that's what they want. I think we should all be paying attention to the news this weekend, especially around the Middle East, because a massive distraction needs to happen. You're in Tehran right now. It's almost like it's silent before the storm, right? I use news sources that are from across the board, guys. I look at everything. I'll look at Fox News, then I'll look at CNN, and then I'll look at USA Today, and then I'll look at Al Jazeera, and then I'll look at the Jerusalem Post. And I compare everything. That's how I figured out Venezuela right before it happened. I was watching everything, and I made a conclusion just like I've been walking you guys through this entire thing. Over these past couple of weeks when I've been walking you guys through each and every event that's been happening, it's exactly what I did with Venezuela. So let's talk about regional powers. I told you guys a couple of weeks ago, and I think this is important because of what we are seeing in geopolitics today. The United States is somewhere in between a regional power and a superpower. It's not quite a superpower anymore. China and Russia are approaching regional power status, and they're trying to reach superpower status. In fact, China is pretty close. They're kind of in that same position between a regional power and a superpower type of position. China is trying to move on Africa and expand its influence there. Russia is trying to expand its influence through Ukraine, and it wants to look at other things towards that area, including previous Soviet states. The United States just took Venezuela and made it a puppet state. If you don't think Venezuela is not in direct control of the United States, you're not paying attention. Venezuela has its own leadership, and it's taking orders from the United States. That's called a puppet state. I think it's solid evidence that the United States is now thinking regionally. And the United States just threatened Cuba and said that anybody that does business with Cuba is now going to get a 100% tariff. The United States is now thinking regionally. We got to take care of Iran quickly because we're not going to be able to focus on the Middle East anymore. What do you think about the world's economic reset? So Cyrus has a really good question. What do you think about the world's economic reset? So throughout history, and by no means when I talk about Germany or Yahtzee Germany, I'm going to say Yahtzee because I don't want to get a strike. By no means when I talk about historical precedent about what they did, I'm not comparing anybody to Yahtzees, okay? But let me just let me put this down and see if you pick it up, okay? So when Germany was being flushed down the toilet by reparations and then the Great Depression, they were being slaughtered economically. They created a new dollar, a Reich dollar, or a Reichsmark. That's what it was called, a Reichsmark. It was the mark, and then they created the Reichsmark. I think the same thing is happening with the dollar to the Bitcoin, or something like that. We're having a reset. We're having a monetized reset that's happening. So when I say that Iran's going to be attacked, I'm not saying it's not going to. So somebody asked right here, the Rock Stone, how is the U.S. going to attack while Iranian airspace is still open? So when an attack is going to happen, they're not going to shut down that airspace right away. And so what's going to happen is that there's going to be an air evacuation notice or a notice to no fly. And that will be announced by the United States. When the United States announces that there's a no-fly zone over Iran, that is a declaration of war. You understand? So the flights are still going to continue until something happens. But if the United States shuts down Iranian airspace, that's a declaration of war. And that's when Iran's going to do something about that, I think. But, you know, so you won't see a lot of airline activity until something is about to actually happen. You're smelling what I'm stepping in, Inky. Yeah. So what would a war with Iran look like? So at first, the Ayatollah and the Islamic Republic would collapse. When I tell you guys, I told you guys this in a couple of videos, when I tell you guys that there is no chance, I want you to understand there is zero hope. If Donald Trump decides to pull the trigger on Iran, Iran stands zero chance. Let me give you guys an example here. In 2017, the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter was played in war games. The F-15 Strike Eagle, 20 of them, was set against a single F-35. And the F-35 shot all 20 of the F-15s down. One single F-35. How many F-35s does the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier have? Nine. How many F-18s does it have? 13, I think. Iran is capable of causing pain. They're capable of causing pain. They are not capable of stopping the U.S. military. Yeah, Inky, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm not psychic. I'm just comparing historical events and just telling you what's going on. Now, I just told you what the capabilities are of the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier. That has 9 F-35s. What is the base right outside of Iran that sits in Qatar? Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. They have an air squadron full of F-35s at Al Udeid. Israel has a lot of F-35s. They shut down Iran's airspace in the 12-day war overnight. Now we have a carrier strike group, not just a carrier strike group off the coast of Iran. We have Al Udeid Air Base with all kinds of capabilities. And we have Israel as well. You guys have to understand the bullshit that's coming out of Iran saying that, you know, we're going to make the water turn red or whatever the fuck they're saying. They literally stand zero chance. If the trigger is pulled, they're done. That's it. They're done. So, what would that look like? Like I said, Kurdish forces would be ground forces. Protesters, demonstrators They may be armed, according to Ted Cruz and some other people in the government. So you take out government facilities, IRGC facilities, you arm the Kurdish forces and the protesters, and then you give them air support where they can call in airstrikes. That's a clear blueprint to take down the Islamic Republic. One shot at a time. Now, things that you would have to worry about after the fact. Of course, the Islamic Republic would be destroyed. But what do you worry about after the fact? ISIL. The Islamic State, right? The guys that came into Iraq and Syria, which is why you see Syria, the new military, which is probably being supplied by U.S. ammunition and weapons, is starting to clear out a lot of their areas. Lunan, I'm just reading this here. Do you have a framework for understanding these things and places to source information viably? So I'll tell you, I've had military training and I've had military history training. Hey guys, thanks for joining. So I went into college after the military and I studied military history. On top of that, I've been absorbing the news like crazy ever since I was a teenager. So I watched the entire Iraq War unfold. I was one of the guys like just saying, you know, even after it was clear that they weren't finding, because remember, I joined in 2007, 4 years after the Iraq War started. At that point, it was clear that there was no weapons of mass destruction. I still joined because I wanted to protect my family. At the time, they were telling us, you know, they were going to come after our family and everything. They already hit the World Trade Center, right? So, you know, you fall into that. You fall into that at 18 years old. You have no idea what the fuck you're thinking or what you're doing, right? You know, you want to serve your country, do the right thing, right? So, Iran, the basics of what's going on right now is that Trump is putting weapons off the coast of Iran. Don't ignore my question. Is there a chance for triggering World War III by China or Russia getting involved? So mutual assured destruction is still a thing. Until the Golden Dome is actually created, it's still a thing. So, still getting over this cough. So, I do think we are in a pre-World War with a chance of it going to a World War. But does that look like China and the United States actively shooting at each other? No. No, I don't think so. I think it's going to look more regional, and I think it's going to look more conventional, because you have to understand the power of nuclear weapons, okay? And I'll go over this real quick. In Hiroshima, when they dropped the bomb, there's people sitting and going about their day that left shadows on the concrete behind them. The standing temperature in Hiroshima rose from around 65 degrees to over the temperature of the sun in milliseconds. People were instantly vaporized. They left shadows on the concrete. That was with a 15, a 1-5, 15 kiloton nuclear weapon. What is the strongest weapon that we have ever, as human beings, detonated? The Tsar Bomba in 1963. It was a weapon measured at 50 megatons. So 15 kilotons is 15,000 tons. 50 megatons is 50 million tons of TNT. There was a small mountain nearby when the weapon was detonated, and the weapon was instantly incinerated. The shockwave from the Tsar Bomba was felt the third time around the world. And with an ICBM and multiple re-entry vehicles, a single ICBM can carry dozens of weapons. In 1963, they were capable of a 50 megaton weapon. It is 2026. If you launch 1,000 ICBMs with each one of them having 24, 36 nuclear weapons and multiple re-entry vehicles, they're going to hit. You can't stop every single one of them. Not without the Golden Dome. You're talking about weapons that can incinerate mountains. Let that sink in for a second. You're talking about weapons that can incinerate mountains. If a world war actually does kick off, it would be regional and it would be conventional. Because if it became nuclear, that's it. There was a study done in 2003, I think it was, of how many megatons it would actually take to wipe out human beings on Earth. Does anybody know how many megatons in one blast it would take to wipe out all human beings? Because of a winter and radiation. 600 megatons. If we blew up 600 megatons all at once, it would be enough to kill all humans on the Earth because of the after effects. That is 12 Tsar bombas. Nuclear weapons are an extremely fucked up situation. That's why nobody shoots them at each other and nobody uses them, not since World War II. Because using them would just be the end. Okay, so let's talk about gold and silver. So, right before the Epstein files dropped, like just right before I saw it on CNN, gold and silver dropped like a manhole cover. Now, why is that? Is that because the dollar is going to suddenly catch because we're going to gain a whole bunch of resources by an invasion of Iran? I think a lot of geopolitical analysts, the guys that actually get doctorates in their field that work for banks and senior government officials, I think they're all telling senior people exactly what I've been telling you guys, is that an imminent event is about to happen, especially after the Epstein files was released. Especially after the Epstein files were released. That's why you saw that sudden dip. Everybody was doing the exact same thoughts, especially the banks. The banks are whales when it comes to gold and silver. If you think about crypto, you talk about whales. Banks are whales when it comes to gold and silver. So they have geopolitical strategists that are telling them what's going on in the world, and these guys have doctorate degrees, right? And I'm telling you guys this, approaching this from a bachelor's perspective and just watching, the world and giving you guys some insight. These guys are probably 3 steps ahead of me, right? And those guys are the ones that are telling the banks to do X, Y, and Z, which is why you saw the effect on the silver and the gold market today. I think there is an extremely high probability that we wake up tomorrow morning and we have seen airstrikes on Iran. If it's not by tomorrow morning, it's got to be by Sunday. It just would not make sense to me. Silver ran out. Yeah. That's another thing that we need to start talking about as a country. So in the 1920s, right before the Great Depression, there was the Raging 20s. If you guys remember that in history class, women started, going out. And they got the right to vote. They started partying and stuff, right? And one of the things that they did during this time between like 1919 and 1925 or so is that they started exploiting the resources of the United States, which means that they cut regulation and they allowed people to go and extract resources and become rich off of natural resources that we had in the U.S. And, it worked out for a lot of people. A lot of people got very wealthy for that. And I think there's an argument to be had about that again. Right now, a lot of federal resources or federal land has a lot of these natural resources and it's protected from being used. And I think there needs to be a way for the government to make sure that the average Joe can get some kind of access to that, and just like in the 1920s, whether it be from the stock market or whatever. But there are people that come onto my feed and talk to me every day, and they're trying to figure out how to eat today, or how they're going to pay their mortgage, or how they're going to pay their rent. And that's on top of us providing, food stamps to millions of people in the U.S. If you have to give government assistance for your population to eat because you don't have the right market opportunities and the economy has a problem. And that's exactly how you solve the problem, is that you exploit your natural resources in your country. Iran's future, so there's 2 different scenarios with Iran's future. Let's say that an attack happens by the U.S. and it fails. Then Iran would probably collapse, even if an attack was completely defeated. Just because there's going to be like a power play. There's going to be a power vacuum now that the authority has been challenged. Right? It's just human nature. So there could be a dark path here with Iran that we look at like it falling into a vacuum of the Islamic State. We could see something like that. ISIL. The best case scenario, the one that I hope for, is that Iran becomes a representative democracy, divided into different provinces or states, right? And they have a representative parliament or Congress, and they have a president that signs laws, and there's no longer a supreme leader, there's a Supreme Court. You know, those type of things are what I hope for in Iran. You know, for them to get the Second Amendment even seems like it would be a great idea with their history now. They've been crushed by an authoritarian theocracy, right? If they do choose to stand up a representative democracy, you can imagine a normal Iranian farmer demanding the right to the Second Amendment. You can imagine that, right? Excuse me. So yeah, I think there's two possible paths with Iran. One is a dark path, which is the path that Iraq and Afghanistan went down. Right? We saw that dark path before. And the other path is a representative democracy. So, you know, I've seen things like the Crown Prince wants to return and stuff. Iran's not going to ever accept a monarchy again. So, I think we're going to see a lot of changes here in the next couple of weeks. You know, with Iran right now, you could see a couple things happening. You could see Iran with a preemptive strike because they can see everything being positioned and they know something is coming and they don't want to negotiate their nuclear program, right? They could do something like that. It would be incredibly stupid, but they could do it. You know, something like that could happen. But what I would imagine seeing is a targeted, precise decapitation strike with forces that would then move in with the promise of a new country of Kurdistan. That's what I think is going to happen. Yeah, I don't believe in a theocracy in any circumstance, really. You know, from a religious standpoint, you know, I don't like talking about religion that much, especially on these threats. But you know, I don't have a problem with a religion in particular, right? I don't. I have a problem with that religion becoming a theocracy, right? So even if there was like, just throwing it out there, even if there was like a Catholic theocracy that demanded laws be you know, ordained by, you know, the priests and stuff like that, even if they had that, I think it's still not right, right? The separation of church and state is an important principle of freedom, right? So it's not really about the religion. It's about, I think the Ayatollah has bastardized the Islamic religion, to tell you the truth. It made it into something that everybody, you know, on the Western side, that are not familiar with Muslims, right, or Islamic people, right, people that are not familiar with them, because of 9/11 and everything. They're scared of people because of what Iran has done, and they have bastardized a peaceful teaching, right? The I did a little bit of studying and religion when I was in school. They say that Jesus was a prophet and not the Son of God, which is one of the main differences of the religions. And since Jesus was the prophet to the Abrahamic people, or the Israeli people, right? And the Israelis didn't listen to the prophet, right? Now, all of the Israelis are infidels, which is their bastardized version of how they're observing Islam, right? And I said this to some of these other people that I talk with all the time. I wish I could like host a barbecue, and I wish I could get like somebody from Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and somebody from Gaza, and just talk and have a barbecue and just try to figure it out. I just and that's just me being an ignorant American, right? I wish I could just put some coals on the grill, right, and just give everybody a cheeseburger, and then just sit down and have some potato salad and figure out how the fuck we fix everything, right? So that's just my thoughts. That if it was my perfect world, that's exactly what I would do. We would solve world disputes over a barbecue and a cheeseburger. that would be my fixing things. So, Taiwan. I think with the regional plays that we're seeing with Venezuela, cheeseburger from Keith is a must. Yeah, I make some killer cheeseburgers, man. Anyways, Taiwan. So, the United States globally is sending the message that we are thinking regionally. We're thinking of Greenland. We're thinking about Cuba. Thinking about Colombia, Panama, Venezuela. With the minor exception of Iran, which we want to take care of Iran before we have to start focusing regionally, right? So, with the focus of regional powers again, China is going to start thinking regionally as well. And one of the things that I could see happening in the very near future, especially with action on Iran, if we are stretched, right, if we can't respond, I think an attack on Taiwan is highly likely by the spring or summer months. That's what I think. And it may be some kind of decapitation strike, just like what we did with Venezuela. That way we don't have any right to complain. Right? I think that's exactly what's about to happen. Now, if Taiwan is taken, why did North Korea send troops to Ukraine? Why did North Korea send troops to Ukraine? North Korea sent troops to Ukraine so they would have an insurance policy. After China took Taiwan, they would be able to try to make a push on South Korea, and they would have Russian support. You see what I've been telling you guys? World War III would be a conventional war over multiple different regional world power changing moves. China takes Taiwan, US takes Venezuela, North Korea takes South Korea. You know, maybe some other regional things happens in Africa, right? Maybe Russia pushes harder on Ukraine. World War III will be conventional and it will be world power changing. Which is why I keep on saying to you guys, I think we're in a pre-World War. China is going to think from, do I have a community? Yes, so on Instagram I have a subscription. It's 99 cents to join. I have a chat with my people. I have a general chat with them and I have a breaking news chat with them. So I'd let them know what chats or what news stories I'm looking at, and I'd have an open conversation with them in another chat. I also have a Discord. Why would they get involved with Iran when they do their part in Taiwan? I think China doesn't involve themselves with Iran very much. They may provide them arms, and they may provide them some support, but China is going to take that as a pivot moment to make Taiwan a puppet state, right? They're going to pivot away from Iran and focus on their own internal issue, and once they are whole, then they can start thinking about other things. But yeah, China is about to drop Iran like a hot deuce. They'll give them some support ideologically, right? And give them some weapons and stuff like that. But that's it. They're not going to send troops into Iran. That's not going to happen. So I did see strikes on Somaliland. I tell you the truth, I saw a little bit about that. Not enough to know about it or speak about it yet, but I did see that there was some speculation that it may be coming. So keep an eye out for that as well. Last thing I want to talk about, Greenland. Greenland has had some developments. I'm fairly sure that Trump's play on Greenland backfired in the most spectacular way. The Danish people are pissed off at us. Greenland is pissed off at us. So I think we have like some kind of deal where we're going to be able to still build the Golden Dome, but everybody's pissed off at us. And the one thing you don't want in an alliance is for everybody to be pissed off at you. There was a moment when this Greenland thing was going on that if Russia attacked NATO like right at that moment, then NATO wouldn't have responded. It was like maybe 1 or 2 days where this was like getting really bad, and there was an opening, and I'm glad they didn't take care of that. They weren't prepared because of what's going on in Ukraine, but there was an opening. Yeah, the native people are very legit. Yeah, they sent stuff to, yeah, that's a good point. But support forces, like technical forces, is different than on the ground forces that are actually going to be shooting. You know what I mean? Like having a radar system that's being operated by Chinese people is different than having Chinese people with weapons shooting at Americans, right? So, but I could be totally wrong. Maybe China gets so pissed off at us that they'll launch all their nukes at us. I hope not. But the one thing that I would say, and I'll just say this in closing, and I appreciate everybody that's been here, that's been watching the show. I do this every Friday night. I want to do it more, but I have a full-time job, so maybe one day this will pay the bills. But I'll say this in closing. When Germany invaded Poland in 1938, everybody thought at the time that it was a regional conflict. And nobody really understood at the moment that it was the start of World War II, a war that killed 50 million people. So, while we are passing through this moment, I want you guys to think about something. Has a moment already happened that we don't consider as being in a world war yet, but has a moment already happened, i.e. Venezuela or something else? Ukraine. Has a moment already happened that historians will now look back at and say that was the moment where World War III happened? Does the UK play any part in this? Yeah, the UK would be part of a coalition going into Iran. They even may be part of initial strikes. Game of Thrones, yeah. It's the rotating heads of state. That's the thing that we've seen in the Middle East. So, this is what I'll say. I'll be monitoring the developments with the Epstein files and Iran and everything else over the weekend. I'll be talking to you guys on my shorts, on my reels, on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok. I'll be keeping you guys updated. I may start doing these lives more often during the week, depending on my workload. So if you guys are interested in more shows, let me know in the comments. I appreciate that so much. They hope I can quit my job and start this full time. I'll tell you what. From the views that I got on TikTok, I'm going to be able to replace my entire my desk, and I'm going to be able to get a new TV because this thing's pretty old. So I got a mic last time with my profits, and I'm just rolling everything back in. Eventually, I'm going to get a better camera, stuff like that. So, enhancing your guys' experience as I develop here. So, you're super interested. I appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate that as well. Perhaps I start doing 2 or 3 times a week. I'll keep you guys updated. If you want access to my chat or my Discord, subscribe on Instagram. Again, it's 99 cents a month. And you get access to my chat, my breaking news, my thoughts. If I post a video, I'll give you guys access to that immediately. So, get it while it's hot. Until next time, guys, I appreciate everybody for being here. And thank you for watching me and even listening to me. I mean, I can't believe all you guys are here. I got, 60 people on Instagram. I got 18 people here. And I love you guys for it. I really do. Thank you. I appreciate it. So until next time, guys, I'll talk to you guys later.